Welcome back, amazing business owners, photographers, creatives, professionals, anyone who wants to make a business and make a living doing what they love. I am so excited to have you here today for today's episode. I have the amazing Caroline Wood, who is from Quietly Extraordinary, who specializes in helping introverts figure out what works for them in their business, especially in marketing. And before you go for that stop button, I feel you. I am not necessarily an introvert either. However, we are going to talk about some things today that will apply to everyone. Things like aligning your business with what works best for you. I feel like I say this constantly in online business Facebook groups. You are the boss. You make the rules. I can share with you what works, but ultimately you get to make the choice for your business and your family. And Caroline and I are going to talk about that quite a bit today. So if you love this episode, can you head on over to iTunes and leave a review? I would so appreciate it. And I have a little freebie. So listen at the end of the episode to figure out how to get access to your free gift just for leaving a review, because I appreciate it that much. So let's dive in with Caroline and talk about business and marketing in the world of introverts, or even introverted extroverts like me. I can imagine some of you might feel some of these tendencies as well. Let's dive right in. Hey there, awesome people. I am Brooke Summer, and you are listening to Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs to learn, connect, grow, and build the business and life that they dream of. Welcome, let's get going and dive right in. Welcome back, amazing business owners. I am so excited about today's episode because we are going to chat about things you can work on in your business and your marketing, even if you're an introvert. Now, this is admittedly not something I struggle with a lot because I am usually extroverted, although when it comes to live events, it is seriously overwhelmed for me. So some of these things affect me as well. Caroline Wood is my guest today, and she specializes in helping business owners build a business that works with, not against, their introverted personalities. And if you're an extrovert like me, don't just hit the stop button, because the things we're going to talk about today apply to all business owners. Things like confidence and consistency and growth, things we can all use, right? I know I can. So thank you so much for being here today, Caroline.
Thanks for having me, Brooke.
First, I would love to know more about you. What has your journey looked like, and what has brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, I've got quite a mixed journey. So I'm a trained accountant, I guess, is where I'd start.
Really?
Yeah, but I've worked in government, I've worked in big accounting firms, and then probably the last 15 years that I was in corporate, I worked in not-for-profits, both here in Australia and around the world. So I've been living in Namibia and also Laos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so really amazing experiences. But I just found that the more time I spent in corporate, the more I realised it didn't fit with my introversion and that I wanted to create my own business. And yeah, I did a few things. I did Facebook ads, which weren't I actually did well at that, but I didn't love doing them. And so I've slowly wound my way through and pivoted where I'm now supporting introvert business owners with things like their systems and their strategies, and via a marketing bundle with their marketing side of things. So that's sort of where I really ended up, sort of helping other introverts to get to the position where I am and use a lot of those skills that I got from being an accountant in the corporate world.
I love hearing how people's previous lives, like not actual lives, but like previous jobs and things affect where they are today, because it's so funny that we think that something wasn't a good fit and yet it set us up perfectly for where we are, right?
Yeah, I think there's just so much pressure on people, particularly teenagers these days, to get, right the first time round when they're leaving school. And it's just like that never happens in real life.
Oh my gosh. My son wants to be a pilot. Like he'll have his pilot license probably by the end of this year. And I keep telling him it's amazing that you know this now, but remember, you can always change your mind.
Yes. Always options.
Right. We can decide, and then we can decide again if we need to.
Yeah.
I feel like I say this almost daily in business Facebook groups, and I know that you are on the same page as well, that building a business means that you get to make the rules and grow it in a way that works for you, even if it goes against some conventional wisdom. Have you been pushed to do things a certain way and then found success by changing things up to better fit you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, particularly as an introvert, there's a lot of marketing advice that's aimed at extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
And while as an introvert, you still need to market your business. You don't have a business if you're not marketing it.
Yes.
There are really nice ways to market as an introvert. And I think a lot of them work through extroverts as well without having to do that really aggressive marketing that you sometimes see.
Yes.
I think, there's so much out there about how you have to be cold calling people and doing all these other things, which feels bad to a lot of people, not just introverts.
Yes. Well, and I think that sometimes people will either identify as one or the other, introvert or extrovert, when the reality is that it's not so black and white. There's a lot of different shades of gray as well. And I know a lot of people have called me an introverted extrovert because I'm
Yeah.
an extrovert. Small talk makes me want to wither and die. So
Yes.
there's a lot of different people that might have different tendencies towards either one.
Yeah. Yes, there's some questions about Myers-Briggs. But yeah, there are
Yes.
16 personality types. There's 8 versions of introversion. So
Right?
that's just so much scope in terms of who you are. And everyone is so individual. Yeah.
So true. I just read or I listened to a podcast episode recently where an expert on personalities was talking about how often we will take something like Myers-Briggs or Enneagram. And when we find something that fits, that's how we start to identify, even if necessarily all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I like to think that they're a guide without them being a set of rules.
Yes.
So even if you're an introvert, I know a lot of people think introverts don't like public speaking, but in actual fact, there's quite a few introverts out there who do because
Hmm.
it's a very controlled environment. They're very much in control of the conversation because they're presenting. So
That's
it doesn't
true.
feel quite so challenging for some introverts.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it might be easier because people can't just walk up to them and surprise them too.
Yeah. And you know what the conversation's going to be about, so you can prepare. So I think
Yes.
that's, for introverts, being able to prepare for things is very important just because our brains tend to work a little bit slower. They sort of found with the science.
Yes. They like to, at least in my experience, examine things a little more.
Yeah. There's even studies that show that with a thought process, there's a longer path that it takes in the brain, the information it goes through. So it just takes a little bit longer for the answer to pop out of an introvert's mouth than it probably does an extrovert.
Interesting. I love learning things like this. It's so funny when people tell me I'm an Enneagram 8, and so that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm like, I don't know that that's necessarily an identity that we want to go with.
Yeah.
Like, again, kind of a set of guidelines, right?
Yeah. Totally.
It is fun to find out a little more, though.
Yes.
So, being an introvert can mean that you don't necessarily thrive being surrounded by people, which can
Mm.
make conventional marketing a nightmare in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. What
Yes.
are 3 tips that you can share with someone who's feeling stuck when it comes to marketing because it doesn't really fit for them in the conventional way?
I think probably my number one tip is remembering you're talking to a person. So rather
That's
than getting
great.
overwhelmed by a large audience, and you can do really good marketing and build really good relationships one-on-one using social media, making sure your email list sounds like you're having a conversation, when you're writing to your email list, that you're having a conversation with one person, that it's really about trying to develop those relationships,
Yes.
which I think again applies to everyone, but particularly for an introvert, if you think about it that way, it's much easier to manage that you're not trying to talk to everyone at once.
Yes, it would seem less overwhelming.
Yes. And then my second tip is probably to look at ways that you can market in a way that feels good for you. So things like getting really good at email marketing and building up your email list rather than perhaps trying to do live videos every day on Instagram might work better for you. So it's thinking about what methods of marketing are actually playing to your strengths and looking at things like getting the SEO really good on working really well on your website so that people find you through SEO, and Google rather than perhaps having to do it in other ways. So it's just really leveraging those forms of marketing that feel good to you.
Yes.
And then my third tip is probably you have to do it. I think a lot of us introverts don't market. So my top tip is probably the top one is actually to start doing something.
Yes.
Whatever feels most comfortable to you.
Even in small steps.
Yeah.
Sometimes even, I love that quote from Martin Luther King that said, you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step.
Yeah.
And that can
That's
be
such a good
very,
quote.
very overwhelming sometimes. I want to kind of go back to something you said, look at ways to market that feel good for you. And you mentioned email marketing, and that is something that I teach. And I have tried to convey how much easier it is for me to do an email than it is to do social, because I write it like I'm writing to someone that is one of my top students or one of my top clients. So do you use email marketing in your business?
I do. I use email marketing, and the other one that's I find is similar to that is Pinterest.
Yes. Isn't Pinterest fun?
Yes, really fabulous. Because again, I think you can write blog posts in the same way you write an email.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you can also repurpose those things, which makes for less having to be in front of people, right?
Yeah.
So you can take one blog post and make it Pinterest pins and an email. It just has so many different uses.
Yeah, I think Pinterest is probably, I don't even think of it as social media. I think of it more as a search engine.
It is. It's what some people have called search engine marketing, which is different than like the ads on Google. It's literally using it like a search engine, kind of like YouTube as well. Same thing.
Yeah. And I think that works really well for introverts because there isn't that whole having to engage all the time on it.
Yes, definitely. I know that my introvert friends have shared that sometimes they feel odd sharing things about themselves. And yet we know that in marketing, sharing more about your own story can be so powerful. Do you have any tips for someone who might be struggling with sharing more about themselves and their own story?
I think it's the big thing is to work out what you actually feel comfortable sharing, what you know is a no-go area.
Yeah.
You know, I don't tend to talk about family on social media just because I feel that they haven't signed up for that, and most of them aren't on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a no-go area, but I'm happy to talk about myself. And I think, again, it's that consistency thing that as you get used to sharing more, it gets easier. So it starts small, start with something really easy and personal, whether it's, for me, you know, it started with perhaps sharing images of my dogs and then talking about more personal things. Like it's just gotten easier over time. And I think that's just how you have to take it and work out what you're not going to talk about.
Definitely. And those boundaries on what you don't want to talk about are different for everyone.
Yeah.
So many people, it's funny, my clients will come in for their photography sessions and they'll say, I don't even know what your kids look like. And say, yep, that's on purpose.
Yes. Yeah. Boundaries are such an important thing. And I think particularly for introverts.
Yes.
Managing boundaries with clients and people on social media is really important for managing your energy.
How do you set the expectation for that on social media without being like kind of mean about it?
I think we give ourselves expectations the rest of the world doesn't have. So if someone comments on an Instagram post, if you don't reply for, say, 24 hours, no one's going to care. Like it's not the end of the world if you take 24 or even 48 hours to respond to someone. It's still, you're genuinely engaging with them. I think we get caught up in this need to respond to people immediately. I know I've been like that in my business, and I don't feel like this anymore, but I used to feel like if I had an email from a client, I had to respond immediately or else I was letting them down. And in reality, if it's 24 hours later or, you know, I have terms in my contract that it might not be for 48 hours, that's fine. You know, the world is not going to end. I'm not doing brain surgery or something where someone's going to die if I don't respond immediately.
That's so true. And actually, I hadn't planned on saying this, but I'm just going to throw it out there. You had reached out to me a long time ago about being on the podcast, and I froze up in fear because of a lot of things that were happening in my own life. And I didn't respond. I had like 20 people that had reached out to be a guest and I never responded. And so just recently in the past couple of months, I reached out to everyone And guys, I know so many people are afraid to do this, especially if have any introverted tendencies, to reach out and say, look, I messed up and I'm so sorry and I want to fix it. And guess what? Not one person was mean to me, not one person, but that's what we think, right?
Yeah. I think if there's anything this year has taught us, it's we need to be kinder and more generous towards people.
Yes.
Because you never know what's going on.
Well, everyone has their own journey and their own things that they're going through.
Yeah.
That's so true. Sometimes we let that fear just really scare us out of doing the things that we know we need to do.
Yes. And a lot of the time they just haven't seen that email because they've gotten so many and they've just missed it.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that's so true. Especially with right now, I know that you are in Australia, but with the election, we have been just drowned in emails.
I can imagine.
Oh my gosh, it is quite the craziness. And so just getting through the inbox can be kind of a struggle sometimes.
Yeah. I think too often we think we've been rejected by someone when in reality it's just something's happened to them or they haven't seen the email. We put so much weight on a non-reply that we shouldn't.
That's so true. Where do you think that comes from?
No, I think there is a lot of concern about rejection out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think I see that quite a bit I've certainly seen it in myself that, not wanting to pitch people because I'm worried about rejection, even though I know when it does happen, it's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we all just want to be liked. That's part of the
true.
problem. And in business, you have to learn that you're not going to be for everyone.
That's true, but that is a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
It is. I think there's very few people who don't want to be liked.
That's very true, but sometimes letting go of that and understanding that we're not for everyone and that's okay is so freeing at the same time.
Yes, it's just hard to get there sometimes.
It is. It takes a lot of time, probably more than I would like.
Yes.
You probably hear or read all the time on podcasts and courses, various communities, that you need to do certain things or have specific processes in place to help with your business. Whether it's lead follow-up, email templates, or workflow, all of this can be so overwhelming, right? Especially when you don't know where to start. I have spent 15 years creating processes that are repeatable for my own business. And last year, I finally launched my online shop where my email templates, workflows, and questionnaires are all available for purchase. And just for my amazing podcast listeners, I have a special code available for you for 10% off of any product on the shop. Just head over to shopwithbrooke.com. Don't forget the E on the end of my name and use the code BSU podcast, like Business Straight Up Podcast, to get 10% off of any product, anything on the shop. Don't let overwhelm or all of the shoulds take precious hours of your time that you could spend with your family or doing what you really love. Check out the templates and pre-done systems that you can copy and paste and implement at shopwithbrooke.com to start rocking your marketing and your business today. So many marketing strategies that we see really focus on being seen and being loud and being consistent when it comes to marketing and business. And obviously that's necessary because if we want clients or customers and they don't know we exist, they won't be able to hire us. What can scheduling a week look like for someone who doesn't really want to go all the time?
I think for me, batching has been really important.
Oh my gosh, that's life-saving.
I think because I know I'm going to have days when my introvert energy is down and I'm really not going to want to be visible.
Yes.
So it's really important for me that on days when I'm feeling really energized and upbeat, they're really good days for doing social media, for engaging, and for getting that kind of thing. So for me, that's been a game changer in terms of managing my energy and still managing to be visible.
Absolutely. And then I've been working in the last year or so to also figure out when I feel more vibrant, more visible. And it's not just a day of the week, which I think several of us want to be like, okay, Monday is social media day and Tuesday is this day. And it doesn't always work that way. What has worked best for you?
I think I tend to have blocks in my calendar, but I'm really good with myself about switching them over if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I've got social media scheduled on Monday and I'm really not feeling it, then I can switch it out with something else, like that kindness towards myself. But it's also sometimes you just have to get down and do it no matter how much you aren't feeling like it.
That's true. You can only put it off so long, right?
Yeah.
What type of, like, how long are your blocks? Do you set aside certain hours? Because I know some people have pretty rigid schedules. And then if they're blocks, you could just switch them out. But are your blocks the same every day?
They aren't. Oh, they generally are 2 to 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Monday afternoons, I generally do client work.
Mm-hmm.
And while that might mean, 1 hour on one client, 2 hours on another or whatever, it's a clear block. That's when I'm going to be doing client work, and I'm not worried about marketing my business or working on my business. That's really clearly delineated.
Yes.
And then Wednesday afternoons are content creation blocks. Again, 2 to 4 hours, but I tend to divide that up between, say, social media and creating a blog post or some other kind of content. So they tend to be 4-hour blocks, but I divide them up quite a bit. And then if I'm having a really bad day, because as an ex-accountant, accounting is easy, I do my books. So that's my little, my brain's completely fried. What can I do that actually will keep things moving forward that I have to do at some point?
That's so funny because it's quite the opposite for me.
Yeah, I don't think many people see they're doing their books as the easy option.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's definitely not my favorite, but absolutely necessary. So we make it
Yes.
work.
Yes. So I think it's when you are really tired, it's finding those tasks that you're going to have to do that feel easy to you.
I love that tip. I'm trying to think of the things that I do. I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I really like that.
I think it's really easy to get caught up if you don't have a plan. It's really easy to get caught up, and I know I do this as well, in the scrolling on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, which is,
Oh my gosh, yes.
without actually engaging with anyone or actually doing anything worthwhile.
Right. And it's so easy to also let your time be consumed by the shoulds, right?
Yes.
The things you should be doing.
Yeah.
All of the things you should be paying attention to when they may not necessarily be actually moving you towards your biggest goals.
Yes. And I think with things like social media, particularly for introverts, scrolling can feel like you've done something. You can say, oh, I've been on Instagram for half an hour, when actually all you've done is scroll through a whole lot of things, maybe
Right.
liked a few things, but that actually has no impact on your bigger goals.
That's very true. It kind of becomes this mindless go-to, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I think it's so funny. I tracked all of my time spent on my business for a year religiously, and I was very, very good about it. And I was shocked at how much time I spent on Facebook.
Yes.
It's something we have to be careful with.
Yeah. I think particularly at the moment when there's being on social media can also be really stressful with everything that's going on in the world. So I think it also adds to your anxiety.
Absolutely.
As well as not being something that's productive.
Yes, especially I have so many friends and family that don't know how to curate their feeds.
Yeah.
Meaning, if someone is just posting negativity constantly, it's perfectly okay to unfollow them. You don't have to unfriend them.
Yes.
It just means you won't see all of their negative stuff all the time.
Yeah. And I can imagine in the US, leading up to the election, seeing so many ads on social media that if you're already stressed about what the outcome would be, whichever way it goes, that just seeing all of that can increase your anxiety levels.
Absolutely. And that energy, like when it decreases your own energy, then you don't have that energy to put into other things.
Yeah.
Whether it's your business or your family or whatever you want to spend your energy on, that energy is now gone because it was taken up on something that didn't even matter.
Yes.
That's really hard to buffer sometimes.
It is. I think this year has been a real lesson in learning how to buffer news.
It has been.
I was consuming way too much when the pandemic first started, and I've really cut back because it just got too much.
Oh my gosh. Yes. We watched the news every single day for about a month. And after that, I was like, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing beneficial.
Yes.
You only need so much information, right? And several hours a day is unnecessary.
Yes. And I'm a bit of a news junkie, and I think I've really had to cut back on that habit because it has not been healthy this year.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's very true. I think that there are so many lessons to be had from this year. I always joke my husband is very much an introvert and I am very much not an introvert. And so He is perfectly happy being at home all the time, and I
Yep.
have had to be a little more creative.
Yes. Although I think everyone is getting sick of Zoom meetings now.
Right? I think we all just kind of need that in-person connection,
Yep.
even the introverts. But
Yes.
my son and I have talked about this quite a bit because he's the same tendencies for himself that I love to be surrounded by people, but only certain people.
Yes. It's been a weird year.
It has definitely been a weird year. That is like the statement for 2020 for sure.
But I think lots of positives have come out of it as well. So
I absolutely believe that. I know that people don't want to hear that everything happens for a reason. I've heard a lot of people get upset about that statement, but everything will work out. It always will.
yes.
And it's hard to believe when we're going through it, and it's hard to believe when it's scary, but it will work out.
Yeah.
Because if we don't believe that, what's the alternative?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I am so appreciative of your time. I feel like introverts kind of get lost in the shuffle when it comes to the marketing type stuff. Is there anything that you would love to say to a newer business owner who may not be brand new, but is struggling with finding consistency in their marketing because they don't want to have that seen type of go get 'em attitude?
It would be to find other introverts. I think, it's easy on Instagram with hashtags, but just go out there and find other introverts and actually see how they're marketing their businesses, because there are lots of successful introverts out there. So you need to go and find them and have a look at how they're doing things, be able to work out a way to market your business in a way that honors your introversion and still lets you have a successful business without needing to send yourself out of your comfort zone every single day.
Yes, I love that. Have you found success in maybe hiring out some of the tasks that you don't necessarily want to do?
I haven't. I think for me, because I find I like social media to be so personal,
Mm-hmm.
and because I use it mainly for relationship building, I haven't done that in the same way. I think it's something that I may look at in the future, but at the moment I enjoy it in terms of that building one-on-one connections rather than feeling like I need to be talking to the masses.
Yes. And it is a more personal connection when you are behaving that way as well, right?
Yeah.
I have just started growing Instagram for my teaching business, and
Yeah.
it is slightly frustrating for me because I want to build connections there as well. So that is my focus, and that is what I love. And when these people just unfollow, and it just drives me crazy.
Yes. I guess for me, I've moved away from, I'm not trying to grow my following anymore. I'm trying to connect with people who I perhaps want to collaborate with rather than sell to.
Yes.
And then use that to build up relationships for things like, being on a podcast or delivering a training in someone else's group, and using those as using them more as an opportunity for marketing my services.
Well, and those relationships are what ultimately feed referrals too, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think that there's I call them drive-by carding, like business cards at networking events.
Yes.
There's the people who will just toss their business cards and hope for the best. And then there's the people who really want to make those connections.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good way for introverts to use social media, is to look at it as a way to connect and build up networks in a way that feels good.
Yes, definitely. Because when you're aligned with what you're doing, it is almost always more successful.
Yes, definitely.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate you being here today, figuring out how to build a business to fit into your life using things that actually work for you instead of forcing yourself to do something that doesn't align is something that so many of us learn the hard way. And you have amazing insight for the introvert or even introverted extroverts like me. Where can people learn more about you and connect with you and learn more about what you do?
So my website is quietlyextraordinary.com. So with the aim, I've picked that name because I really want people to realize that you can be a quietly extraordinary introvert in business.
I love that.
And then my social media handle on most of the social media is just Quietly Caroline.
I love that. I love that so many people think that you have to have this huge presence, right, to make a difference. And that's not always the case.
No, not at all. there's some big name introverts out there who've made some significant changes to the world, but they do get talked about. I think it's just people don't think of them as introverts. They just see them as successful people, which is a really interesting
That's true.
thing.
That's true. Every time I read Denise Duffield Thomas's books, she talks about how she's an introvert and there are certain things that just don't work very well for her. And I always find it interesting that she says she's an introvert because she doesn't seem that way to me.
Yes. Yeah, I think she's a really good example of, and I know she does a lot of batching and things like that, of creating a business that works for you.
Definitely. I love this information. I feel like I identify with it as well, even though I wouldn't call myself an introvert, but I definitely identify with the batching, especially. To all of the listeners and business owners that have joined us today, thank you so much for listening. I am truly honored that you pressed play and spent this time with Caroline and I. If you are someone that loves to help other people and you know someone who can use this information, maybe a business owner friend that you have that feels like they are just too shy to make this work, please forward this episode over to them. If you are thinking, wow, this content was amazing, Brooke, how can I ever thank you? I have a way you can thank me. If you can head on over to iTunes and leave a review. I know it takes a couple of minutes. It seems small, but those reviews mean so much to us in the podcasting world. It helps me know how I can better serve you, and it helps me to have amazing guests like Miss Caroline here. So hit pause now, leave a review, and if you screenshot your review before you submit it and email over to hello@businessstraightup.com, I will send you a free gift. Please leave those reviews so we can continue bringing you awesome content every week. Thank you so much for your time, Caroline. I'm so glad we could connect today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you.
It is such a nice conversation with someone that's a little more chill. I feel like everyone right now in the world, everyone's so anxious right now, right?
Yes, they are.
And understandably, I mean, things are volatile and a little crazy this year, but you know what? We'll all get through it.
We will.
And thank you to all of my listeners. And I have an assignment for you, some homework, if you will. I want to know what is something that you have been trying to do that doesn't quite fit, and how are you going to change it up a little bit this week? Let me know in the community at businessstraightup.com/community. It is time to start stepping into the CEO role of your business, which means aligning yourself with what works for you, even if it's not what everyone says you should do. When you align with what you love, you will know how much what you do really matters. You have the power to impact your clients and change the world. And I can't wait to watch your business grow. Thank you again, Caroline.
Thank you.
Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to Business Straight Up. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Check out the show notes for this and all of the episodes at businessstraightuppodcast.com. And I can't wait to talk with you again. Have a great day.